probably getting kind of tired of these video meetings. It'd be so nice if we could meet in person, but hopefully time will come when we will all see people's smiling faces. But thanks for making the time. So looking at both Ellie and I both looked at the oral communications, and nobody has posted anything. Do any members have anything that they would like to comment on or mention that is not on the agenda? All right, so we are done with oral communications.
Hey, Linda,
yeah.
Can we do can you acknowledge during oral communication?
Yep. Yeah. Oral
I think we
communication.
should acknowledge the technology department and their work to switch us over to Infinite Campus. I can tell you, I did not get a single email this week regarding Infinite Campus. And I was or last week, I should say. And overwhelmingly, it went fantastic. And I just think it's really important to recognize the IT department. So I'd like that in a minute.
I agree.
Yeah, that was incredible, Lucas. It just was seamless.
Well, unfortunately, I saw all the things that went through the cracks, but I think for the majority of folks, it did go pretty well, and I do appreciate that, John. I will tell you that my whole team, the whole data division, worked very tirelessly over the winter break. I even worked some on Christmas Day, as did some of my other staff. So it was a very much a team effort. And we're still, we still have more to do, but we're making great progress.
Great. Awesome. Thank you, Don. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add? Oh, our new board member is here. Good evening, Vivek. Welcome. I think you might be on mute.
Hi, sorry for late joining. I was waiting on the other meeting and then I realized I saw this new link.
Oh,
email.
Sorry about that. Yeah, we just found out that link wasn't working about half hour ago or so. But welcome, everyone. This is Vivek. He is our board member representative. He will be sitting in and listening to our conversation and our decisions and giving us some input. Okay, done with. Do people want to see the agenda? I don't know. Should I share the agenda? No? Okay. All right. So our next thing is to approve the minutes from last meeting, December 7th. Quick question. Did people like this, the way this was organized with the meeting, the invite with all the stuff connected to it so that you didn't have to go bouncing all over the place? All right, great. So I will continue to do that and try to keep things organized as much as possible in the invite. And Ellie, thank you for posting the minutes in there too. That works out very well for all of us, I think. Okay, so do people have a chance to look at the December 7th minutes? All right.
I move to approve the minutes.
As is?
Yep.
Okay, do I have a second to approve the minutes from last meeting? Michelle, you're going to second? Okay, thank you, Michelle. All right, all those in, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes from our last meeting, December 7th, please say aye.
Aye.
Or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, anybody abstain or not abstain? Anybody voting no? Okay, any abstentions? So I think anybody who was not here at the last meeting would be an abstention. So Anita, you weren't at the last meeting, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so you would be an abstention. All right, so the meetings can be posted as done. Moving on to old business, we have our second read for the Surfboard E member. Have people read the second reading, or do we want Barth to go through the second reading?
Go ahead, Bart.
Okay, so this would be the second reading of a bylaws change to the membership section. So that's under our bylaws, which are posted on our public site. Article 4 is membership, and under A is the classification of the membership. And the idea would be to add a new number 3, and then move the other two numbers 3 and 4, turning into 4 and 5. And the third item would read 3, student member, 1 student representative shall be appointed by the Students United for representation to the Fremont Unified School Board District of Education, or SURF Board E as it's known.
All right. Does anybody have any questions or comments or any issues with this? Now, this, just to be clear, is this a voting position or non-voting
Yes.
position?
The
This
two
is a,
takeaways are this is adding a full member to the bylaws. So they would be a 2-year, and it would also be a voting position. So it would be considered just another member, a full member of the TAC.
okay, so this would be a 2-year saying, so we're saying that no senior could be appointed to the committee.
Correct.
Okay, so, okay. I think, Tom, you had a question or a comment? No? Dawn?
Didn't in the minutes it said that we said 1 year so that there would be more participation?
So we talked about 1 year, but to have a true second reading, I don't think we could change what we read the first time.
Okay.
So if we don't agree with having it a 2-year term, we would vote this down, and then we could start a process of adding 1 year to this specific member would be I think the right protocol to add.
And it doesn't require the word voting, right? Because it's understood that if you're a traditional regular member, you have voting rights. Is that correct too?
Yes, they're in the upper part of the bylaws, which state that they're a full member.
Okay, that's all my question.
The ex officio, which is the non-voting.
So just to be clear, we could not change the wording of the first reading on the second reading. It had to be the same wording.
I'm open for any other members if they have any other parliamentary rules or something behind that, but that's what I figured, but I don't know exactly.
I thought I saw Robert pop in, but I guess he didn't. Okay, so Michelle, do you have something? You're on mute, sweetheart.
Sorry.
No,
My
it's all right.
understanding is that when you are making a change, if you change on the first reading, then then it's a first reading again.
Okay.
You would bring it back, and then this would be the first reading if it was changed, and then the next one would be the second reading.
Okay, so the first and the second readings have to be the same. Gotcha. Thank you, Michelle, for clarifying that. All right, does anybody have any questions? Do we want to go with this wording? Any comments?
I have another procedural question. If we were to want to revise the language to reflect what seemed to be the majority view during last meeting, that we would want it to be a single-year position to allow for greater student access, do we have to vote no on this, or do we simply send it back for another revision and first reading?
I think we would vote no on this, and we would come up with a first reading tonight, or would that be the next meeting? Would we come up with a first reading tonight and then a second reading at the next meeting?
Well, unless you'd have to change all the wording, and then you would have to have a discussion on the whole reading, and then you'd vote to accept it. And that would be the first reading.
Okay, so tonight, if we were to change this tonight, this would be the first reading.
Correct.
Is that how everybody understands that?
Correct.
Okay.
do we need a motion to vote on the current reading,
Yeah, we need a motion. Yeah, we're in the middle of discussing this, and then we can make a motion to either accept this reading as the second reading or change this. If we don't accept this, then have a discussion to change the wording. So
Technically, you have to have a motion before
Right.
the discussion, but
right?
I think you make a motion to approve this and then the discussion happens and then we
Okay.
vote.
Yeah.
Well, I was
I'll
trying
make
to
a
get,
motion to accept the as it at the second reading and recommend moving forward.
okay, anybody have a second for the motion?
I'll second.
Bart? Okay. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Wait. No, it's not. So I would like to get a sense of what people's opinions are about it being 2 year or 1 year, how many people feel like it's worth changing it. And how many people think we should move forward with it being 2 years. Because I'm of the mind that I feel like 1 year makes a little bit more sense for a kid in high school. 2 years is a long time. I'm seeing nodding heads. So I know I personally would be in favor of doing 1 year, but I'm open. What I would like to hear is reasons why it makes more sense for it to be 2 years.
So in talking with the SURF representative, they also would like it to be 1 year. I recently saw in the last email after they were tracking on that. And that's because of the same reasons we suggested. You wouldn't have seniors. They actually, I think, reapply every year anyway. So the potential is they might lose a member between that year, even if they had been appointed to the TAC. The reasons not to do it is because we would like more consistency and a longer knowledge, deeper well of this membership on the TAC issues. So if we just say 1 year, we're going to be kind of retraining and reintroducing some of our bigger discussions to those members. So that's as much transparency as I have, but I think I would vote yes, I guess, to have it a 2 year position and see if SURF 4D could figure out how they're going to respond to that versus us messing with our membership and dividing it into smaller bits and whatnot.
Okay, Lucas?
One question I would have is, by having a 2 year term, would it actually preclude a senior from being a member? I mean, in theory, we could have a senior who became the member and then they just resign after 1 year. I know it's maybe it's just specific language that I'm kind of toying with here, but it seems like that would be a feasible option. I mean, the reality is, even if we have a 2 year term and we have a junior who becomes a member, they might decide to resign after 1 year because for whatever reason. I guess that would be a clarification. Would it surely preclude a senior from becoming a member if the SURF board wants to have a senior be a member?
Yeah, that's a question I have is SURF 4D a 1 year term? Okay, so that, I mean, it kind of then, to me, then it makes sense that they would only serve a 1 year term here because as Barthy said, if they aren't on SURF 4D anymore, but they're on TAC, that doesn't really, make sense if they're SURF 4D, if they're supposed to be a SURF 4D representative. So that's my, Tom?
Yeah, I guess I kind of go back and forth. I think there's the philosophical and the practical. I think one of the issues you're going to have with a 1 year is that you figure it's going to take them a couple months even to understand what we do. And many of the issues we have are continuing issues or ideas. I guess my feeling is ideally it would be a 1 year that lines up. But from a practical standpoint, I probably won't be here, but, to start with a 2 year, see how it goes and see what issues come with it. And then if it is problematic, then go back. My experience with SURF, many of those people do 4 years. We know from student government, the people that do student government multiple years. It's not like it's a rotating door. So I understand the idea of a one, but from a practical standpoint, you're looking at a student that might not even until November or December understand really how TAC is working. Whereas if you had a 2-year, they would be more prepared to understand and really make a strong contribution second half of the first year, and then particularly in the second year. But I guess, I'm happy to vote either way, but I guess my feeling at this point, if we're waiting another 2 months, we're then waiting again to go from that.
Right. Anita, did you have something to add?
Let me unmute myself. Well, I would say that 1 year makes sense to me. As a parent, I see the students who are interested in that getting in, and I've seen at least my kids kind of go through that the second year if they are really engaged, and most of them end up being engaged. But it was just the initial idea of signing up for a 2-year may detract some of the kids, especially in high school, from participating. So I'm for the 1 year. I kind of think that might work out better.
Okay, Ellie?
Previously, we had asked whether student members on other district committees were or had voting status or not, and it seemed like the majority do. So we went forward with exploring having a voting member, a voting student member. Do we know whether other committees across the district that have student participation have that 1 year or 2-year commitment? Because it seems the whole idea of needing to continually onboard a new student would be a problem that any committee would have to struggle with.
Right. Yep. Robert?
Everyone currently has a 2-year commitment, but we have people that leave early for whatever reason. So it seems to me that wouldn't hurt to have them try and commit to a 2-year, and if they really don't like what we do, and then they can resign.
Okay, Dawn? Dawn, you're on mute and your hand is raised.
I was trying to click on it, and then I almost hung up and I got scared. My question is, if we were to switch it to 1, and I'm now leaning toward 2 now, because if they can resign anyway, it's really not a 2-year commitment. We can't make them come back. But if it were 1 and they did the first year, does that make them ineligible to do the next year? Like if it was a 1-year commitment and I'm at Washington High School and I did it my junior year and then I loved it so much I wanted to do it again, do I have to be done after a year if it says 1 year?
I don't think so. I don't think there's anything in here like with PTA. You serve a 1-year term and you can serve 2 back-to-back 1-year terms, but that's it. You can only serve 2 years with PTA. But I don't see that as being in our bylaws. And I mean, a number of us have been on here for quite some time. So no, it wouldn't preclude them from serving 2 back-to-back years.
It would be up to Surfboard.
Yeah,
Right.
so it probably doesn't really matter. If we say 2 and they only do 1, they can. If we say 1 and they can do more than 1, then they can. So probably could just move forward and let them decide.
Yeah.
I have a
No,
question.
one second, Anita. I gotta like cue. Michelle?
Yeah, and just in listening to this, to me, when you go into something and say, well, we're going to do it for 2, but if they resign, it's okay. Then that kind of gives the message to everyone. Well, you can, if you didn't like it for 6 months, you can get off the board, and you still are going to have an inconsistency. I think we want to set our students up for success. I would much rather see a 1 year. If they want to renew it, they can do it second year. They can do a third, fourth year for that matter. But let's have it as an opt-in rather than, oh well, I tried it, I didn't like it. It was on a Monday. I have French horn lessons on Monday. It's kind of a conflict or whatever. That's what we want to give to our students. I think we want to see our students try out things, see what is their passion, that they can give us that information, because if they are truly engaged, then they're going to get the information that we would really want on this committee, to get it from the students, rather than, oh, I talked to my friend in the carpool and this is what we came up with. So I go for 1
Okay.
year.
All right, Lucas?
So one piece of information that I seem to recall is that part of the interest for this was that there was a senior that was interested in being on the committee this year. So if Surf 4D were to, if we were to vote for 2 years, and then Surf 4D were to say, well, the reason we wanted to do this was because we have a senior who's very interested in doing this. You know, I think it'd be hard to say no to that student if no other students wanted to do a 2-year commitment. But I don't know if that's if that would prevent us from selecting a senior, perhaps just on this initial year. I'm not certain if it would.
Okay. Anita?
I actually agree with what Michelle was saying. The question I had is, I understand the reason for asking for 2 years. If we go with 1 year, is there an incentive for students that are really interested, that are motivated to say that, hey, if you've done a year, you kind of, have a motivation to, or have an incentive for them to continue for the second year? That sort of makes sense to say that, in the second year, having participated, then you kind of have a right to apply to be in there for the second year, kind of an incentive for prolonged participation.
All right. Bart, did you have something?
I was just trying to scan a couple bylaws, and it's pretty mixed for other committees. Some are 2-year commitments, some have a mix of 1 and 2-year commitments for members, and then some just have 1 year. So I don't think there's any standard that we're seeing with other students on other committees.
Thank you, Barth.
All right, Tom, did you have something to add?
I was just going to call for the question.
All right. So do we want to take a vote here? All right, all those in favor of proceeding with the first read of our Surfboard e-member edition, please say aye.
But I thought, whoa, the motion is to accept, this is the second reading, correct?
Yep, that's what I said.
And the way it stands, it's a 2-year commitment, right?
Yes.
Correct.
All right, so do I want to start the vote again, or? All right,
Linda,
so we have a
sorry,
motion. Yes.
You might just want to have people type it into the chat. Sometimes that's easier to count and stuff, to say yay or nay or abstain.
All right. Let me get to my chat. All right. So all those in favor of accepting the first reading to add a Surfboard member for a 2-year term, voting member, please type yes. All right.
I'm confused. Is this the first reading of this, or I thought this was the?
No, this is the second reading.
Okay, so yeah, so this is the second reading. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We had the first reading last meeting.
Correct.
All right. Oh, and Anne is participating as well. She must be on the feed. So does that count?
Yeah. Where is she?
I'm sorry, I don't see the vote in the chat.
No, she just texted me. She must be watching.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
Okay.
And everyone can vote in the chat at this point.
Yes.
Yay or nay, doesn't matter. We just get every member in there.
Okay. All right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
4 to 4.
8, 9, 5 to 5. We have a split vote.
With 2/3, it doesn't work though.
That's right. I mean, even if, yeah. All right, so
So can we change it to 1 year and do the first read tonight?
yep.
So
So
can
we
we,
would,
do
so
we
we
make
want to,
a motion to edit the document for approval for a first read with the change of it being a 1 year?
sure.
Okay.
So it would be, Bart, do you want to make those changes or?
Let's see. I think that the membership talks about the time frame in a couple spots, so we would have to.
I think you need to notify the public that you're presenting it, and then first reading would be the next month.
Yeah.
It's a little complicated.
You can't.
Okay.
I voted yes, because I was
That's
trying
why I
to.
said. That's why I said 2 months. So now That's why I said 2 months. You can't just say something and then say a first reading. You have to let people know that they have the right to comment on the first reading. So
Okay,
so Bart could change the language. The next meeting we would have the first reading. So you're looking at February.
yeah,
And in March you would have the second.
We're gonna lose this whole year.
That's yeah.
It being a bylaw change, it's understandable that we'll take a number of meetings and discussions, and it has a higher threshold to pass. So it
Right.
makes sense. It's complex, and so I will be charged with adding a 1 year term language to this and have that on the agenda for next meeting.
yes, thank you. Lucas?
The only thing I wanted to mention is that if we did want to try and get this through this year, we could have a special meeting.
Yes. Vivek?
So even though the bylaws can change over time, right? So if Surfboard E has a candidate that can start attending, let's say in April as a full member, I mean, that person can start attending the next meeting onwards as a guest. So there's a learning curve, right? So does anything prevent the appointee from Surfboard E side to start attending the next meeting onwards and learn, and they can become a full member in April.
Yep.
The one thing is it does come to the board, so then there'll be another little window that bumps it to any bylaw change, then goes to the Board of Education, and then that would be turned. But our meetings are open, and any Surfboard, which I will pass along to our representative, if somebody does want to start watching and asking questions and participating in public comment and things like that, of course.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's open to the public. We're in a
Yep.
funny situation now. Normally we are public in person, but things are different now. And this is hopefully
Right.
just very.
All right, Tom, did you have something to add?
No, I'm good. Sorry, I forgot to lower my hand.
No worries, no worries. All right, so we are going to move this we're going to have a first reading of a new addendum to the bylaws for the Surfboard E member. And we will discuss that next meeting. All right. Any further discussion on that? All right, moving on to the Responsible Use Policy Subcommittee report. Who wants to take hold of that? Barth, do you want to spearhead that for me?
Sounds good.
All right.
So this document was shared with the committee last December to try to get it in front of the committee a little earlier. Currently, even though it is called Responsible Use Policy, it is really just focused on turning Gmail on for students. That's really the main document. We've been talking about technology use agreements for a year plus, but This one is right now focused on language, the language for an advisor or advising a policy language for Google Mail, Gmail for students. So it's a tighter document than the entire responsible use policy. But I would suggest that if this does go through, there will be edits to the technology use document that reflect we're promoting, if the board passes Gmail and the executive branch or our executive management passes Gmail, then we would make changes that reflect the Gmail policy, but it doesn't really touch on some of the goals of our technology use policy, which is to turn it into responsible, to have better language around etiquette and update devices, naming, and there's a number of policies out there where technology is a few years back in both vocabulary and online learning and other spots. So it doesn't attack all those parts, but we do have a lot of good notes around some of those pieces. But this one is primarily just a suggestion for a added Gmail policy for students.
Okay, Robert, do you have any questions?
Yeah, sorry, I maybe I missed this discussion earlier. I'm kind of confused. Is this a separate policy, or is this done because we're not moving fast enough on the other policy, or is it going to be combined or kept separate? I'm really not clear where this is coming from.
This is adding to our technology use of policy, talking about using Gmail for students. So it's adding to it, I guess.
All right, Lucas? Oh, sorry, Bart. Lucas?
Yeah, so I think the important differentiator here, Robert, is that this is the responsible use agreement itself. So this is the form that the students and the families would sign. So this is different than the student use of technology board policy or the employee use of technology. So this is not a true board policy. This is just the agreement that the students sign. And one of the reasons that we technically right now cannot enable Gmail, even if we have the capabilities of supporting it, is because our current agreement that families and students sign says that as a district, we do not use Gmail for students. And this does not require board approval for us to change this. It would probably go to the cabinet for review if we were to bring this recommendation forward, which is of course different than the board policies, which would actually have to go to the board for approval.
Okay, thank you, Lucas. Vivek?
So just a clarification, is this the discussion about giving students a fustk12.net email address?
Art?
Sorry, I'll jump in. This is to provide a document if that was turned on by this committee, but it's not saying any implementation or any approach to do that or giving it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. It's just saying if you did turn on Gmail, we feel that this would be a decent document to support doing that.
Okay.
So Vivek, all the students at FUSD have FUSDK12.net accounts.
Okay.
It's just that the Gmail portion of that is not turned on. So they can use it to access Google Drive and anything Google except for Gmail.
Okay.
Okay, just so that you're clear that the students do all have accounts. They just don't have the
They have an
Gmail
account.
portion.
The email is not enabled.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Dawn?
And so including this in there, is there any concern about then that pressure to turn it on sooner than when the IT department feels ready to be able to do that? You know what I'm saying? Is there an expectation, if it's included, of it being turned on? And this is more anecdotal, I guess. And then my other question is, is it the same for all grade bands? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, is it the same user agreements for this Gmail that for a kindergartner that it would be for a 12th grader? Is there any differentiation, I guess is what I'm wondering. So those are my two thoughts.
Barth, you want to comment on that, or do you want me to take another question?
No, that's fine. So in the document, we do break out a walled and a non-walled group. And so the younger students would have a walled Gmail account. And so that the entire document covers all of our students, but there is some differentiation in that across the board.
Tom, did you have something?
I was just going to say exactly what first I want to say thank you to Bart, because Bart is really the man who put the pedal to the metal and did all the legwork and everything. But that was a conversation of at what age do we feel the students, is it age appropriate that they would have access to quote the outside world via their Gmail account? And we kind of came up with the middle school as being a good going into high school. And that's kind of roughly, if I remember correctly, where we kind of ended up, right, Bart? At the 8th grade, it was walled. So they could all email within the community, the FUSD community. When they get to high school, then they can move outside on a non-walled environment. And that's kind of where we settled.
And would this also keep people from coming, if under 8th grade and under, would this keep people from being able to, like, would this keep me from being able to email my son with my personal account? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah. I will
Robert,
say
I'm sorry.
one of my fears was that, I mean, there's the safety aspect, but my other fear was that right now using School Loop, all of my communications, my student, everything they get in School Loop, we hope, assuming their friends aren't cluttered, everything in their mailbox is educationally driven. And what we didn't, particularly the younger students, my 7th graders, I don't want them using that Gmail for every, signing up for everything. And then my information going to them get lost. We assume hopefully by the time they get to high school, now they can start to filter and decide what's important, not important, go from there. So that was the second part of it, aside from the safety considerations. Obviously, the younger you get, the higher the safety concern. But that was one of the conversations we had.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Robert, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just wondering when are we planning to roll this out? How do you get people to sign this use agreement in order to use a Gmail? Are we gonna wait till next fall when they sign all the paperwork that they usually sign, or are you gonna try to do this in between?
I think the current plan is just to have us agree that we agree with this current document. And then all the implementation and all of the, if it actually turns on, and if it even gets split up this way, and maybe they pilot it for a year, and who knows what other sides of the coin there are. But I think we're just trying to say, if we were going to look at a policy that is close to what we agreed to, this is what we would give senior management and the board.
Okay, so we're just trying to get ahead of things. That's good.
Don? No? Okay, Lucas?
Yeah, Robert, that's a really good question. And I do appreciate the work that this committee is doing on creating an agreement that would at least allow us to consider the option of doing Gmail for students. I just obviously voiced my support of having email accounts for our students at previous meetings as well. If we approve this, what I would tell you is I will bring this to cabinet to look at. And I think from an IT perspective, it's relatively easy to turn email accounts on. But as a number of you have alluded to, including Don tonight, there's a support factor associated with this. And we need to make sure that as an IT department, we could support this. So that would be a discussion as to how we would do that. I think there would probably need to be training as well for staff that turning email addresses on. It's a different way of engaging with students. And so there's some things that staff need to think about if they're doing that. And then, just finally, it would be a bit of a culture change, I think, for how we're doing things. So yeah, we would do what we need to do to at least have it looked at. And I personally would really like to have it happen this year yet, but we're going to need to jump over a few hurdles to get this happen.
Okay, thank you, Lucas. Any other questions or comments for Barth and the committee? All right, I think we're looking for a motion
I
to
make a motion,
approve.
we accept the first reading.
Okay, do I have a second? Don, second? Thank you, Don. All right, all those in favor of, Anita, did you have a question or were you seconding?
I was just seconding.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all those in favor of the first reading of the Gmail use agreement, please say yes in the chat. All right. Were there any no's? Everybody seemed to go through, so I think everybody said yes. All right, any further discussion? All right, the first reading of the Gmail use agreement has been approved. We'll put it on the agenda for a second reading next meeting. And if anybody has anything they want to change, let's change it now. All right. So moving forward, new business. We had some concern about member attendance that was asked to be put on the agenda for this meeting. So we have had some members that have had other commitments due to COVID that have had arisen. Anita being one of them, and it was just it was a circumstance that it happened, and it was due to our circumstances right now. And we're thankful now that hopefully Anita won't have any more conflicts and she'll be able to join us for the rest of our meetings. One other member, Alok, he got back to me today regarding he has had some health concerns, and we'll know a little bit better by next month what if he will be able to commit to the remainder of his term, and has asked us to that he would have a better reply for me by February. So he has asked if we can hold off until February on asking him to step aside if he can't make the commitment. Does anyone have any other questions or comments regarding member attendance? So if you're not aware, there is a note in the bylaws, or a spot in the bylaws that says being on the committee, you are asked to attend at least 70% of our meetings each year. And if you're unable to do that, you could be asked to step aside so that another community member or staff member can make the commitment can do so. Does anybody have anything else to add?
I have a quick question. So
Yep.
we already have a vacant seat. So just wondering, are we in the process trying to refill it?
That has been a thing. So what has to happen is when there is a vacancy, it has to go before the board. So Lucas has to do a bunch of paperwork to basically look at past applicants and reach out to, so it's it's several steps. He needs to reach out to past applicants to see if they're interested. Then if they're interested, he's got to bring those names to the board, and the board then during one of their meetings needs to pick somebody to fill that spot. So, you know, he has to get on the board's agenda to do that, and reach out to all the past or current past applicants. And it's just with the ISI and everything else going on, it's really been, you know, kind of difficult to get all that going. And with everything that the board has been, you know, going through, and with the pandemic and all that, it's kind of been hard to squeeze things in. So yeah, so that's what happens with, at least that's what, I shouldn't say that's not all of the board members, are the community members. Because the staff members are appointed, some of them are appointed by the superintendent, some of them are appointed by their unions. So mostly for the community members. Does anyone have anything else to add? Was I pretty
That was very good.
correct on what I was talking about?
I
Thanks.
would add one minor comment. Even if we cannot replace the committee member, we can vote them out. So that makes it easier for us to make quorum. Just about every year that we've had this committee, 90% of the time we cancel a meeting every year because of quorum. And for those of us who have to struggle through traffic to make it to a meeting just to find out it's canceled, it's kind of annoying. So
Robert, don't jinx us. We're doing fine this year.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's because you're the chair. So very well this year.
Everybody likes to come to my meetings.
Yes.
Oh, thanks. Ellie, did you have something to add?
I just wanted to thank you, Linda, for reaching out to our membership, and also to wish Mr. Desai and all members continued health.
Yes, thank you, Ellie. I wholeheartedly agree. All right, so does anyone have anything else regarding committee member attendance? All right, so let's move on to Lucas's update.
All right, well, let's finish this meeting off. Take some information for you all. Okay, got a bit of a list here this week. I wanted to give you.
Hey, I don't know. Excuse me, Lucas. Is anyone else finding the sound a little bit hard to hear?
Yeah, I can't hear it either, Don. Sorry.
You're a little echoey, Lucas, and it's a little bit hard to hear you.
It kind of muffed.
I'm hanging on your every word, but I'm just struggling a little bit.
We're all hanging on every word.
Yeah, just they're all kind of muffled together.
So I think what I'm going to do, it must be that the speaker on my laptop is interfering with my mic on my webcam. So what I'm going to do is I will mute, and let's see, I'll turn off the volume on my laptop. I think that would probably help. I won't be able to hear you though while I'm talking. So if you're going to interrupt me, you have to really shout something.
Hey, one quick suggestion, maybe you can turn on the caption. I find that if I turn on the caption, if I miss anything from Lucas, I can just go back and check the caption.
Sure. All right, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, I wanted to share a quick update on our teacher laptops. At the board meeting last week, I did share that we are expecting delivery of our teacher laptops in the middle of this month here. Lo and behold, on Friday, we got a communication from Dell telling us that there are screen manufacturing delays for the particular model of laptop that we ordered. We immediately reached out to our salesperson through Dell, and she put us on an expedited list. We have a meeting tomorrow with Dell to talk with them. I'm anticipating at a minimum that they already have 500, give or take, that are being shipped our way. We also saw something that seemed to show that our laptops had been manufactured, and that's what we're trying to confirm with our salesperson. But that was really surprising news. We obviously hadn't heard anything up until that point. In fact, our salesperson had not even heard about this. So we had notified her, and then she trying to jump to our rescue. So I'm crossing my fingers that she will be able to get our district to the top of the list, because we've obviously been waiting for a long time, and the need for our teachers is very great. Reality is, even if we get 500, that will help, but obviously we'd like to get all 2,000 laptops. The other thing I wanted to share is that we had ordered 3,000 Chromebooks, and those are actually currently being distributed. And I don't know if at our last meeting, if I really clarified, the idea behind the 3,000 Chromebooks was we had reached out to principals to get an idea of, at the current breakage rate or failure rate of Chromebooks, how many Chromebooks would we need to get us through to the end of the year? And the very, very low number was 1,000. But we felt like that was really putting it close to what we were thinking. So what this does is it gives roughly 100 laptops to some of our higher need schools, or 100 Chromebooks to some of our higher need schools, and about 50 to our lower need schools, give or take. And the lower recommendation was about 50 Chromebooks to get through to the end of the year at the current rate of breakage or regular failure of the system. The other thing I wanted to let you know is I believe we've received about 12,000 headphones of the 27,000 that we ordered. We ordered those obviously to improve the audio quality for students who might have lower quality Chromebooks. And also for the potentiality that we will have to do state assessments from home for our students. That's going to be a really, really big lift if we are expected to do that from the state. But we knew that if we didn't have headphones and mics, it was going to be very, very difficult. And
Lucas,
course,
can you say that number again for the headphone?
That was a major, major lift. Doing mid-year transition for a district of this size especially is very, very difficult. Ellie, you have your hand raised?
It was just a question. I'm sorry, I didn't capture the number of headphones that you were reporting.
Yeah, I think we have around 12,000 now. I will be checking with Mary Lassica, our IT administrator, to get the exact number. Yeah, so the good news is that Infinite Campus has gone live. Typically, when you go live with a system like this, there's a 3 to 4 week adjustment period where you're identifying data anomalies. People are getting accustomed to using the new system. And frankly, I think we're doing a pretty good job at that. And I do want to really give kudos to our data division, who really worked tirelessly, even leading up to the winter break. And over winter break, they worked really, really hard. So I can't say enough good things about them. The other thing I want to remind everyone is that when we went live, there were obviously features that we're not planning on using quite yet. So there will be training for our principals for scheduling, and we're also working on online registration, which actually is technically live now for our new families, and that's going very smoothly. So all of the registration for new families is actually being done through the online registration portal, including uploading any types of documents that they had that they needed for the registration. And that was a huge enhancement over the Illuminate ISI product, which did not support attaching documents for online registration. And so I want to shout out a big kudos to the student services group as well, who have worked really hard to put that together and have been supporting their staff on making sure that they're following their process really well, getting the families the support that they need. And I also want to mention one of the really nice features of this system is the single sign-on functionality. So with Illuminate, the accounts were actually all standalone. And for those who maybe have not used the Infinite Campus option, what we've done is we've actually integrated the single sign-on into the Google Waffle. So for all of our staff, once they're logged into their Chrome browser, they simply go to the Waffle, scroll down to the bottom where the custom apps are, and click on it, and log them right in. And the one big benefit of that is when we go live with our student and our parent accounts, the student accounts will also be single sign-on. So every single student, when they're logged into their Google account, they will simply click on their waffle, click on Infinite Campus, and it will log them in and give them access to the options that are going to be available for students. And I will actually share with you that all of our student accounts have actually been created and are active. And I will be working this week yet to come up with our strategy for communicating that out to our students so that they'll have access. We're also working on our plan for parents as well. Obviously, the new parents are already getting set up and going through the online registration process through the portal, but we have to communicate this out to all the families. What I do want to share is that we have run into some unexpected things. School Loop is one of them, and Illuminate PMA is another one. So one of the things that we anticipated was that those vendors would be able to map our section information. And once we went live, that those systems would be updating with our semester one rostering data. Unfortunately, after working with Illuminate PMA and School Loop, they have been unable to map our information. So what that means is our plan is to go live for those two products at the beginning of semester two. And this is really unfortunate. We've been the whole week last week, we worked extremely hard with the companies to get that working. But unfortunately, the mismatch between the section structure was not something that those vendors were able to support. So the downside of that, for those who might be thinking through this, is basically there's a 3-week period right now where we get a handful, well, it's more than a handful, but we get a number of new students. And those new students are not being added to VMA or assessments that teachers might want to give electronically or for the gradebook. Now, thankfully, with only 3 weeks left in the semester, there's not a huge amount of assessments that would necessarily be given there. And some of those assessments could also be offered through like a PDF or another way to give the assessment. It's unfortunate that this happened, but our data division team worked really tirelessly, and the vendors would not support it. So I think while there is some pain involved, obviously there's not a ton of movement at this time of year, right before the semester ends. For new students coming in, typically those kids are not necessarily going to get a final exam either in the classes. If I'm coming in and going into a calculus class and I've only been in it for 3 weeks, I'm probably not going to get that final exam. And if they really needed to, we could do a PDF option or something like that. I do want to share that we do have our curriculum and instruction team who is available to support those teachers who have new students to help them come up with ideas and troubleshoot ways to kind of get through these couple weeks that are left. And I did want to share too, one piece of information where I think there's been a little confusion. One of the emails that I sent out indicated that we would have Google accounts being created right away on the first day. Well, it took us till the second day. So last Tuesday, we actually had Google accounts being created from the new student information system in an automated fashion, with data being exported to our identity automation tool. Some teachers have thought that the accounts have not been being created. And I think the confusion around that has been that our passport application, which allows teachers to manage passwords for students, is not being updated quite yet. We think we have a solution as of today. We'll take a look tomorrow to see if that's being updated. But for any teachers who need help with a student getting the password reset, they can reach out to the IT department through the help system. And that's my update.
Thank you, Lucas. Does anyone have any questions or anything for Lucas? Ellie?
I just wanted to thank Lucas and the IT department for the distribution of the Chromebooks. I know that sites are grappling with some units becoming damaged due to their extreme use, daily use. at home, as well as some of the units, of course, being close to their end of service life. So sites are working on using their own funds to tackle that problem, but having the district's support in helping solve that problem is genuinely appreciated.
Yes, thank you, Ellie. That's a great point to make. Anyone else have any comments or questions for Lucas regarding his update? All right, we are whizzing through this. All right, does anybody have any items for potential future agenda? This is a tongue twister here. Potential future agenda items. Anybody have any, Bart?
So in working with the Gmail policy, I think it would be good to start a new subcommittee to focus on editing the technology use committee or technology use board policy, and making sure that we have kind of another round of eyes looking at some of the bigger pictures that we as a committee have brought up. The previous subcommittee got a little focused right on the Gmail. So by closing that previous one, we can kind of be happy with that document. But now I think maybe we might want to start another subcommittee to basically attack wherever the word technology shows up in our board policy, because it needs to be looked at and make sure it syncs with both online learning and modern digital citizenship language and those pieces there. So I see the updating policies is basically something that the board, if the board is already approved, whereas we would be editing policies in this subcommittee because we need to check the language of the current ones and then provide them as an advisory document to the board to keep us, kind of moving forward with our board policy and our advisory role.
Okay. Anyone else have anything that they'd like to add for a future agenda item?
Well, one of the topics that we discussed in the board meeting last week was that as we think about getting the students back into school, one of the topics that we've been discussing is allowing students to take courses across campus. And for that, there would be some technological challenges as to what facility setup would be needed and what technology would have to be provided so that students can call in without disturbing other students, right? So this may be something for this committee to consider.
Are you talking about being able to take classes from home?
Well, from home to start with now, right? And this is a discussion that I've had with Mr. Larson as well as with FATA leadership, is when everybody is at home, taking a class that is offered for Washington High students to take a class that is offered at American.
Okay.
Right. But when you
you're talking across district, not across campus, right?
Sure.
You're talking, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I wasn't sure what you meant by across campus.
Right. So
I understand now.
Areas so that's a so for that there would have to be some accommodations made so that students can actually do this even when they are back at school. And this committee should consider what all we would have to provide in order to achieve that.
Okay. Tom?
Yeah, I would think that would be putting the horse before, or the cart before the horse. There's a lot of considerations before you offer classes across the district. Whereas if Vivek is talking where a teacher is teaching a class in the classroom and then you're providing technology where other students are watching. Is that what you're talking about, Vet? Or you're talking about a totally online environment where a teacher would be sitting and just teaching online to a group of students across the district?
But this latter is what would be the initial case, right? And we want to see how in a purely virtual environment we need to experiment how students can mix with other student groups, right? And for teachers to suddenly get someone that they're not even familiar with. So there would be certain things to iron out there. Eventually, it should lead towards having a hybrid setup. But yeah, I agree. I think that's putting the cart before the horse now. But at least when the teacher has only students dialing in, but dialing in from different places, how can that work out?
Let's put that on as a future topic of discussion, not to be discussed right in this meeting. I was just looking for ideas since our our section there is empty. All right, so I have the two ideas. I'll maybe put those on the agenda for next meeting, depending on what we have with Lucas and the rest of the district.
Can I chime in here, Linda? I would
Yep.
like to be very clear exactly what's going to be on the agenda here, because there is an assumption being made that teachers would be teaching in this environment, and that is beyond the purvey of this committee. So I would like to be very clear exactly what it is that this committee would be discussing.
Okay, we will work on what we would be discussing. But I don't think we don't want to be hashing that out right here.
Putting it on the agenda, then that's exactly what we are doing. I mean, that's like saying, I would like to discuss the technology needed for the board members to attend all of the PTA meetings. Is that within my scope? No. Our scope? No. It would come from the board that they would say, we would like TAC to discuss how the technology be made available. That's my concern, is that we're making the assumption that this is going to happen, and how are we providing it? So that's
Okay.
my concern.
I understand what you're saying. I completely understand what you're talking about, Tom. You know, and I guess that would be, you know, where we would cut the line here is, you know, what technology, do we have the technology to support that if it were to happen? I think that's where we would
Then
go.
I would like to put on the agenda what technology is needed for board members to attend all the PTA meetings.
Okay. I hear what you're saying.
I mean, we're putting it out there that this is something TAC is looking at, and we do not have the ability to look at things beyond our scope. I mean, that
Okay.
this is just not I just do not think it's I'm speaking as a teacher. That's if TAC is looking at that, that's going beyond the scope of our.
Okay. All right. I understand what you're saying. Does anybody have any other comments, questions?
I think this is a gray area. Traditionally, this committee has been designed, as an area where people who in the community who have questions or interests or ideas have been welcome to come and talk about it. Usually we take it direction from the board. So if the board were to agree at the board meeting, that's an easy way. But otherwise, we've always encouraged parents and teachers to say, hey, I've seen something, or I'm thinking about something. Because where else would they talk about this? That doesn't mean that we have to take a position on it or vote on it. And I realize it's a gray area because maybe we are intruding on areas that we're not supposed to. We haven't really had that situation before, where I don't know, maybe the committee has to vote on it. I don't know.
Yeah, I honestly, I was just looking for things to get on the agenda, not to have a huge discussion here. It kind of blew up on me.
Yeah.
Vivek, did you have something to add?
No, I was going to say what Robert just mentioned. Over the years,
Okay.
not as a board, we've had discussions on multiple topics, and
Right.
not so perhaps because I'm here as a board representative, it seems like it's going in a different direction. But as a community member, I'd like to be able to have that conversation.
Okay.
But anyway, I mean, you're running the meeting, so you define exactly what gets put.
Okay.
Then the committee should decide what gets put on the agenda.
Yes. Thank you. Ellie?
Obviously, since we are in an educational orientation that none of us have any background experience in it, we're working collectively. All of our organizations, the board, all of the labor organizations are working together to eventually release back to some form of normalcy. There are going to be a tremendous amount of technological considerations involved in any transition out of distance learning into future hybrid or in person. And Thomas, you're correct. We're not policymakers in regards to those decisions. But if Mr. Prasad is going to be ultimately reporting back to the board on these topics, it seems that our expertise and representation of our various groups would be rather informative to address some of those questions that he might have. So I guess that's my roundabout way of saying I would be in favor of at least having the topic on the agenda in the future.
And having some discussion. Okay. All right. Anne had her hand up, but then there she is. Anne, did you have something to add?
Just having a marvelous Monday. For future, it doesn't need to be right away, but as we're moving into the budgeting cycle, it's become pretty evident for many classified employees and likely for teachers and principals. It would be great if our VoIP phones transcribed our voicemail to our email. So down the road, budgeting cycle, something if we could learn more about that and the whys and the why nots possibly.
Can't we just vote on that right now? That's a great idea.
It's difficult when we know of technology companies in Silicon Valley that use exactly the same phones and we don't have the same functionality. And now that we're in Marvelous Monday mode, we really need it. So.
All right. All right. Well, I got a couple things to get possibly on future agendas to discuss. Robert, did you have something to add? Okay, no. Tom, you have your hand up. Did you have something to add?
No, I think everybody's got my opinion on this, adding this to agenda item. So I think this is gonna be very contentious for this board, putting this ahead of any conversation before that's been talked about, how even a classroom looks like this environment. I think that this is very disingenuous to say
so
without doing it. So I'm going to lower my hand and leave it at that.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Robert, did you have something?
Yeah, I'll suggest something from another committee. And I agree with Tom that just because someone's out there said something, we have to talk about it. Actually, we've generally had fewer topics than too many topics. But one thing that another committee does is they just ask how many, are people interested in this topic? And if a reasonable number, and it doesn't have to be a majority, but if a reasonable number of people agree to it, I think we picked about 25%, then we talk about it.
Okay.
So that's the suggestion. We can talk about that next time, but it's not in the bylaws or anything, but and I'm not sure we want to put it's not in our bylaws in the other committee either. Now that I think about it. Okay.
Well, we have several things to go on the agenda next meeting anyway. So I was just looking for future things as stuff starts dropping off. All right. So I guess that's it for this meeting. Oh, Michelle, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You got to wave that right in my face.
Sorry. The only thing I would suggest is maybe having a standing agenda item that may or may not, if something comes out of the board that Vivek, as the liaison, could say, yes, this was brought to us. If there was any more feedback or any more information that they wanted to impart on us, to provide feedback. My concern, Vivek, is you made a comment that you said, well, there's this board stuff, but then there's stuff as me as a private citizen, basically. I think that would kind of separate it, because certainly you're allowed to be here as a private citizen, but you are the liaison to the school board. And that's how I see you. When I see your name, I'm going to see you as the liaison to the school board in whatever you say, unless you say differently. And so if we had just a standing line item, this is the liaison from the school board, we can talk at that point. I understand you, Tom. I'm not saying get the cart before the horse, but that's where something as a directive coming from the board, or the board. That's where I would see it. And it just, monthly you say, was there anything? Okay, moving on.
Okay, I like that idea, Michelle. I like having that kind of as we have Lucas's CTO update, we could have a board information update or whatnot. Tom, did you have something else?
I just want to be clear that this is going to be on our next TAC agenda, this topic.
No.
It's
No,
not.
I put it. I was requesting for things that could go on the future agenda.
Okay. So,
Okay.
Okay, so it's not on the agenda then. Okay.
Not as of right this minute. No.
When would we know if it's on the agenda or not?
I'm not sure. Let's say it's not going to be on the agenda next meeting. I'll promise you that.
Okay, thank you. You just stop texting then. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Anything else?
I have a question. So I'm a little confused about this process of how we determine what goes onto an agenda item and what doesn't. I don't see us being in any type of position to make commitments or offerings. But I do see the opportunity as an advisory. There's a lot of work to be done when we reopen schools. We don't know what it's going to look like. And so to be asked for some input as to maybe what some possibilities are in terms of technology and hybrid learning, that kind of conversation seems worthwhile, just in a brainstorming, throwing out some ideas. But in terms of our agendas, so after this meeting, Linda, what happens? You and Lucas meet and determine what goes on the agenda, and what's typically the process for that now we're saying, well, maybe it'll be on the agenda or it won't be on the agenda or future agenda. Like, what's the process?
So usually the week before our meetings, Lucas and I meet, albeit virtually, to discuss what is going to go on the agenda for the next meeting. So I usually try to have that a week before, so that I can get the agenda out to the Friday before our meeting. And it's basically what has been on for this year. It's really been what we've been discussing. It's just rolled over. And it's been stuff that Lucas has requested or been asked to have on the agenda to discuss. It's not anything that I'm throwing out there because I don't personally know. We should be getting the direction from Lucas. But I just threw it out there tonight, because I know in past we've had, a list of potential future agenda items, and all this year we haven't had any potential anything. So I don't know where that list came from. I believe it would come from us. But maybe I'm wrong. So, Lucas?
I know my sound quality's been pretty bad tonight. I was just told that by one of my household members here as well on the stream. But yeah, the agenda setting, hopefully people can understand, and hopefully it's not that bad. But the agenda setting historically has been me working with the committee chair. And we've obviously taken recommendations from the members. And certainly if the board or if cabinet has asked me to talk about something with the committee, then we usually put that on the agenda as well, which is how our board policies ended up as part of our discussion last year. So hopefully that gives you an idea. From my perspective, if there's interest from really any member for a particular topic, I would certainly discuss that with our committee chair. And typically there's no reason why I would say no, we're not going to put that on the agenda. Certainly there are topics that are outside of the bounds of our particular committee. We are an advisory committee, and I think that's really important to remember. And there can be some downsides to talking about topics that might require negotiations. But I think certainly any technology specific topic that aligns with potential needs or current needs of the district, those are things that we would definitely consider having on the agenda.
All right, did anyone else have their, Tom?
I just want, before I went off the rail there a little bit, the only thing, since I don't know what the format will be because we've never, but the other thing that I can speak now, having worked at Centerville for years in technology, I've really seen this technology divide between, Edie, my wife, she teaches up at Hopkins and she's online. And then I look at my students online and this huge technology divide between different schools. Obviously we're working through that and, great support, but I think that, normally I wouldn't have suggested it, but you've opened the door, is the idea that how we decide as a district, will the district provide one-on-one computer access to students, whether that's on-site one-on-one, one computer to one student, or access that they are able to check them out and take them home. And as a long-term program, I think that's something that really has to be evaluated because my students do not nearly have the technology access that the students up in the mission attendance area. And I think that's a real divide, and we're not providing equity as a district to those students. So I think that's something that, whether the board directs us or not, that's something we could look at as well.
All right, thank you, Tom. Robert?
Kind of going back to reiterating what they said, because wait, I'm making. Is that it? Okay. Important that yes, the chair and the CTO set the agenda, but it's really important that committee members feel comfortable bringing up items. Maybe people don't complain enough, but I haven't heard anything in the last 5-10 years where people said I want something to talk about and I'm not allowed to talk about it. So if someone wants to bring something on the agenda and we can't, then we need to figure this out. But otherwise, everyone should be welcome to.
Thank you, Robert. All right, anything else?
So if we're saying that, I don't think it's appropriate for you to say you're definitely not going to put that on the agenda if it was brought up. So
Well,
I'm not saying you should or you shouldn't. I'm just saying you shouldn't say that you won't. You and Lucas need to talk about it.
Yes.
But if you go by what Robert just said, and there's interest in having this conversation about, is that a possibility? Do we have any kind of input? I don't see why we would say it can't be on the agenda.
Okay. Thank you, Don. All right, I'm going to confirm our next meeting will be February 1st, 2021. And if everybody is good, I am going to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone. Happy New Year.
Thank you